Welcome to another episode of the Life Plus God podcast, everybody. My name is Alyssa Robinson, your host, and today, Reverend Gracie's back with us. Hello, Gracie.
Hello.
So glad that you're here. And our question is, when did Jesus' teachings get weird? And
when did they not?
I know. I asked, so my dad this morning, he's an avid listener to the podcast. Hello, Dad. So he asked, he was like, so what are y'all talking about today? And I was like, when did Jesus' teachings get weird? And he was like, they're
always
all kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
But
fair.
Just to clarify, so the way that we're approaching this episode is, I think that as Christ followers, and if you're someone like me or like Gracie, where we're constantly in the church, we're constantly studying Jesus, sometimes we read Jesus's teachings and stories so often that we stop realizing how radical and unique and out of the ordinary they are. And Jesus had some really weird things to say. So you could argue his entirety of his teachings and being was weird and outside of the ordinary.
Countercultural.
It's kind of the whole point.
Right, exactly.
But today, what I want to focus on are there's some individual elements of Jesus's life that I'm like, okay, this is even out of character for Jesus.
Yeah,
like, this
seems
is out of the ordinary for Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so those were some of the stories that I wanted to focus on today to figure out, what can we learn from these? Like, what is there some sort of interpretation that we may be missing? Or I don't know, because a lot of these stories we're going to hit today, we don't talk about a lot in our teachings around Jesus. We lean more into the parables, but some of these are I'm just going to jump right in.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm going to list out all of the things that we're going to talk about today at a high level, and then we'll dig into each of them individually.
Sounds good.
So, one of the stories we're going to talk about is Jesus cursing a fig tree. It's very random. It comes out of nowhere, and I don't really understand. Like, he was mad that this tree wasn't producing fruit, and he cursed it, and it died. I imagine like this lightning bolt coming down from heaven and just like
kind of deflates.
The second one is Jesus pulling a coin, telling his disciples to pull a coin out of a fish's mouth and pay their taxes with that coin. And so it's like, the disciples are like, how are we supposed to pay our taxes? And Jesus is like, oh, go catch a fish and then pull a coin out of its mouth. And I'm like, okay. Interesting.
Can we not just, is there a reason? Can we not just pay the one from my pocket?
Yeah. Another one that we're going to talk about is Jesus transferring demons from people into pigs, and then those pigs running off a cliff.
Yep.
So that's a very interesting story that PETA might have some words about.
Honestly, yeah.
Jesus's rampage in overturning tables in the temple. Now, this is one that we do talk about a lot in the church as an example of righteous anger.
Right.
But it is so counter to Jesus's character in literally every other story. Like, we don't see him throw temper tantrums.
Yeah.
And this is
it's
a
the
Jesus
most
temper
violent.
tantrum. Yes.
I guess you see Jesus.
And then one that we're going to cover is Jesus explaining the purpose of his parables, why he speaks in parables, which I'm not even going to give you a preview into that because I want y'all to listen in, because it might not be the answer that you think. And then why is Jesus like spitting on blind people all the time?
Jesus,
like using his spit to heal.
Come on. Gotta be a better way.
Why did it have to be spit? Because I have like a weird ick about spit. Like, I hate it. Like, I can't. Sometimes I get a gag reflex from brushing my own teeth because I hate like the spit in my mouth.
Oh my gosh.
So like, just the idea of Jesus like spitting on his hands and putting them on my face, I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll just stay blind.
Actually, I'm okay with it.
Yeah. No, I'm cool.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of information we're going to cover. And I hope that y'all will stick with us because I think that these are really fun stories to explore. They're weird. They're unique. You don't hear about them often from the pulpit.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. Where do we want to start? Fig tree?
Sure.
Okay. Can you read us that scripture and
let me go to it.
Get us started here?
So a lot of these are found in multiple gospels, and I wrote them down for my own edification. So this one I'll be reading from Mark 11. Curses the fig tree. So it's Mark 11, starting in verse 12. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, Jesus, was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see whether perhaps he would find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. He said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard it. All right.
And then the tree was just.
And then.
Do we know what happened to the tree, or is it just?
Well, so interesting that we can go to the cleansing the temple one next, because immediately after Jesus cleanses the temple, that's the next verses. And then after he cleanses the temple, they pass by, start in verse 20, it says, "In the morning as they passed by, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. And then Peter remembered and said to him, 'Rabbi, look, the fig tree you cursed has withered.' Jesus answered them, 'Have faith in God. Truly, I tell you, if you say to this mountain, be taken up and thrown in the sea, and if you do not doubt in your heart, but believe that what you say will come to pass, it will be done for you. So I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, for it will be yours.'"
I guess one of my first questions, why did Jesus expect to find fruit on a fig tree when it specifically told us in scripture it's not the season for fruit?
Yeah. So the only thing I kind of found around that was that it's literally the words are the time for figs, that it was not the time for figs, and kind of in parentheses, or a time appointed for figs, and it's like appointed by God, is kind of the implied to be there. So it's literally not the time appointed by God for figs. So I would think that this has more to do with like the symbolic thing of that Jesus is frustrated that he's ready, or he feels ready to lead, or maybe not even that he feels ready, but he's frustrated that it's not the time yet where he will be where he will get to be raised, but the people are not fruitful people yet. They don't fully believe in him yet, like all of Jerusalem. So it's like it's not yet the time appointed for him to be quote unquote installed as king. So I think he maybe is taking out his frustration of being like, oh, and it's not the time for the figs to be fruitful either. I'm just so frustrated. And like, so it could be a symbolic thing about.
See, that's one of the things that I've read is that some people interpret it as Jesus, like you said, Jesus's expectation for spiritual fruitfulness in people, and then finding that there is no fruit.
Right.
And while that is a beautiful image,
right,
usually in the Gospels, Jesus is very clear when he's speaking in metaphor, or when he is speaking in stories or parables, or trying to make a comparison for us. And this is not one of those times that he does that. It just kind of happens. And then it's not until after he's overturning tables in the temple that we come back and see that the fig tree has died. And so like, I understand us wanting to put that interpretation on it, but it feels like a little bit of a stretch to me. But if it's not that, then what, you know?
Right.
Is it just like,
if it's not the, just if it's not the symbolic thing, I could see it still being Jesus's frustration of knows what's about to happen to him. He has entered into, this is immediately following his entrance into Jerusalem, the triumphal entry. But of course, we know it's him entering in on a donkey and what is about to happen to him, his last week. And so I could see it as him, like, it's like one more thing that like, he's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and that's where I think is like, I think one of the things it reveals, there's so much in the last week of Jesus's life that reveals his humanity in a new way. Because a lot of what we see of Jesus is the divine Jesus, but I feel like we're given insight into his humanity in so many different ways. And this might be one of the ways that we never thought of before, of like, I think of when in real life, when you see a grown-up temper tantrum, someone gets really upset. People who are just being unreasonable to servers or hospitality workers or things like that, and throwing a temper tantrum, one of the things I've learned is it's rarely ever actually about the thing they're upset about. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, you never know what's going on in this person's life, what they're dealing with personally, what grief they're processing, what things have gone wrong, you know, all of these things. And that's what I think of it is with Jesus is like, man, there's a lot weighing heavily on him
And
this
so it's like
week. Like,
wrong
he
place,
can
wrong
kind
time.
of see the writing on the wall of what's going to be happening in the next few days. And he's like, all I wanted was a piece of fruit.
Yeah. He's like,
I can't even have a snack. I can't even have a snack.
Right.
Like, it just, and so for me, it makes more sense to me for this to be like revealing a piece of his human character than trying to pull like this huge spiritual symbolism out of it that I don't know, but I get the symbolism in retrospect.
It kind of, it can make sense with the symbolism when you follow it with the cleansing of the temple too, because it's two things that are supposed to be fruitful that are not. And so there could be some purpose there of like, just putting them back, having that back to back of saying like, look, like, because Mark does that kind of, even with we'll get to the blind man, that's like putting that where that's structured in the story is very purposeful when you see where else it's around. But something I saw is that there is reference to fruitless fig trees in Jeremiah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's in Jeremiah 8:13 that the fruitless fig tree is an indictment of Israel's leaders. So that they
what? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I should take back everything that I said and say it is symbolic.
Sure. I mean,
it's just more examples of Jesus fulfilling prophecy.
Right. So it's God kind of condemning Israel's leaders. I just want to see what it says exactly in 8:13. When I wanted to gather them, says the Lord, there are no grapes on the vine nor figs on the fig tree, even when the leaves are withered, and what I gave them has passed away from them. So anyway, so God is talking about Israel's leaders. Yeah.
Okay. Then that makes it really interesting. Let's jump to the overturning of the table.
Yeah.
So straight from the fig tree, he walks into this temple, which is full of spiritual leaders.
Yeah.
And like maybe, and I'm just going to like make up my own narrative here. Maybe Jesus walked into the temple hoping for rest, hoping for a moment of spiritual renewal, hoping for respite from because that's oftentimes why we walk into a sanctuary, is if we're feeling overwhelmed by the world around us and that there are things that we can't overcome in this world on our own, we walk into a sanctuary looking for a place to find rest. And instead what he found were salespeople hawking their wares. And so that paired with the fig tree starts to make more sense to me of, that's really interesting. Thank you.
Oh yeah. No, it is like when you put it all together, that he's
It's like hoping to find fruit and it's not there.
Yeah. And that,
and then afterwards he walks out and the fig tree that he didn't find fruit on is dead.
Yeah.
What is that? It's almost like foreshadowing.
Yeah. So and the temple would have been really packed at this time now because it's Passover. So specifically at this time of year, there would be a lot of people visiting the temple, even more than normal, like an extraordinary amount of people. So to see this, what is supposed to be a holy and just a spiritual experience for people is being turned into it's being taken away. Their worship is being overshadowed by guilt and money of like, hey, you need to, like, don't you want to have the best sacrifice? Like here, or like I'll exchange this for your tax and like charge them an exorbitant amount of rate change or whatever.
So I get all of that. So what I don't understand is, well, I guess I do understand if I'm leaning into the humanity of Jesus, but why he specifically reacted that way now, because he's been seeing that his entire ministry.
Right.
He's been dining with tax collectors who are taking advantage of communities. He's been calling out Pharisees and Sadducees for basically religious legalism as opposed to actually trying to learn the heart of God and share God's love with people.
Yeah.
So he's been seeing this all along. Why react in such a violent way of literally flipping people's tables and destroying property in this situation?
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, my best thought would be, again, that it's like come to this breaking point of Jesus knows this is his last week. And
I got it up to here with you guys.
Literally. Yeah, no, actually. And to kind of draw a really physical attention to and like show a very physical way of what he's been trying to teach this whole time, of like trying to get their attention of like, I have been saying this all along and I cannot believe that you have been getting frustrated at me for not taking the law seriously when I'm showing people mercy. And now here you are taking the taxes seriously, but not showing mercy. Like you're missing the point of what the temple is supposed to be. And here you've been mad at me thinking I'm missing the point of this faith. And now he's literally, I think he's trying to draw their attention of like, do you see what this place has become? This is a temple of God. Like this is supposed to be a house of prayer. Do you see the mess that is here? Like, how did it get to this point where you are literally taking advantage of people and you're caring more about money than people here in God's house? How did it get to this point? So that, to me, that's kind of like what struck me of this, is that he's really like wanting them to take like that this is the like most violent, I guess, most physical demonstration that Jesus is like, how have you gotten here?
Well, that's almost like what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, is that riots are the language of the oppressed. And it's not that, like, you've done everything that you've possibly could until this point to peacefully communicate and collaborate and bring people in on this message, and you're not hearing it. You're willfully ignoring and misinterpreting the things that I'm saying, and there's no words left for me to say. There's only like,
how can I get your attention anymore?
And it kind of makes me wonder, like, is this ironically the nail in the coffin for him? I mean, of like what led him to the cross? Of, not to say that if he hadn't acted that way, it wouldn't have happened, but like it definitely armed the Pharisees that were coming after him and wanted him gone.
I think that's basically it.
So I wonder, is this an example of, because I do struggle with the concept of like, oh, this is what righteous anger looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what we're learning from this? Or is this an example of us seeing like Jesus's human nature stepping in? Or is it divine still? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, this part confuses me.
That's a really fair question of, is this something where we're supposed to follow in his example? But
I mean, there are definitely strong lines that tie to today and what we see happening in churches today, and prophets mattering more than people. And we see people being taken advantage of and all sorts of stuff. I mean, Jesus would be turning over tables today.
Right. No,
in
exactly.
many ways.
Yeah. And so that's what I kept coming back to when I was thinking about this passage, of that Jesus, more than any other topic, Jesus continually talks about people's love of money, and like compare, and over any other topic, over sex, over divorce, over literally anything that we spend so much time being legalistic about. But Jesus always is so concerned about people knowing, because he knows that people love money, but you cannot love God and money. And so I think this is Jesus. I think it speaks to us definitely today, of saying like, we as religious leaders, as any community leaders, need to be able to take a step back and see, are we still doing what we came here to do, or has money gotten in the way? Has money infiltrated, and have we take a step back for a second, and can we see, like, are we somehow accidentally, have we lost sight of what originally we came here to do, which the temple is supposed to be a place of worship. It's supposed to be a place where people come and be with God. And somehow, like, I don't think, it's not something they one day decided, but it's like slowly they all of a sudden ended up with having these money changers in the temple, having these people sell they probably thought this was a helpful thing. And then this is Jesus being like, no, remember why you're really here. Like, I've been trying to tell you all along what the purpose is and show you and teach you, but like, now I just need to get your attention.
Yeah.
So
it feels to me as though like the weirdness of this interaction with Jesus, because it is so out of character, is exactly the reason why we need to pay extremely close attention to it.
Yeah.
It's not just like random, oh, Jesus lost his cool, like it's like the culmination of like, this is everything wrong. This is everything that's wrong. Everything that I've been trying to teach you against, everything I've been trying to warn you against is happening right here and now in front of my eyes.
Yes. This is not a new teaching for Jesus. This is just taken to the next level of, I've been saying this all along. Oh my gosh, you don't get it.
Okay, so money.
Yeah.
Pulling a coin out of a fish's mouth.
Yeah,
let's jump around a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you read me this story and tell me what it means?
Yeah, let's go for it. Okay, so that's the end of Matthew 17. So it's Matthew 17:24. When they reached Capernaum, the collectors of the temple tax came to Peter and said, "Does your teacher not pay the temple tax?" He said, "Yes, he does." And when he came home, Jesus spoke of it first, asking, "What do you think, Simon? From whom do kings of the earth take toll or tribute? From their children or from others?" When Peter said, "From others," Jesus said to him, "Then the children are free. However, so that we do not give offense to them, go to the sea and cast a hook and take the first fish that comes up. And when you open its mouth, you will find a coin. Take that and give it to them for you and me." Yeah. How is that not clear?
Is that okay? What is the theological view of that little story and event?
So this is actually very similar to another teaching Jesus has in Matthew about when it's pay to Caesar what is owed to Caesar. When somebody asked him like, should we not pay our taxes? And so anyway, Jesus is teaching in that instance about the pay to Caesar what's owed to Caesar. It's his face on the coin. Jesus is drawing attention to that the things of the earth, sure, Caesar can have that, but the people really belong to God. Caesar wants money. Okay, fine. He can have money, but the people are not Caesar's. The people belong to God. Peter correctly identifies that the king collects tribute from his own subjects, not others. So Jesus is trying to get Peter to recognize that all of the disciples, that the Jewish people, first and foremost belong to God, not the temple leaders. God is not asking for the temple tax. The temple leaders are asking for the temple tax. They, as people who belong to God, are free. That's what Jesus says, is that the children are free. You, as a child of God, do not owe God anything. It's the temple leaders who are who are asking for this. So yeah, go ahead and we'll pay the temple tax, just so that they say, we won't get in trouble. But
that has nothing to do with your relationship with God.
Right.
It's not like if you don't have enough money, you can't get close to God.
Right. And so Jesus is like kind of saying like, yeah, okay, we'll pay the tax, but we'll show them, but I'm doing it in a way.
But it's going to smell like fish.
It's going to smell like fish. That's true. That I didn't even think of that part. But that
what is the fish part though? Like, why is there a symbolism there?
To me, my line of thinking was that he's like, yeah, okay, I'll pay the tax, but I'm still showing you who's really in charge and who's really has power, and it's me, not you. That I can conjure a coin from a fish in the middle of the sea. But yeah, I'll pay the tax.
Yeah.
I'll pay the tax, but it's miraculous. I'm the one who's in control, not you.
It's kind of, I feel like we all have these moments as we're growing up, entering the world after like being in the safety net of our homes, and suddenly we're living on our own, we're paying our bills, we're doing our own thing. I feel like all of us at one point, the thought crosses our mind of like, money is so silly. Like, what is the point? It's just a piece of paper.
Yeah. It has no value.
Yeah. It has no value except that we give it value. And some people would be like, oh, it's backed by gold. Not anymore.
Right.
Not anymore. It hasn't been backed by gold in a long time. So it's basically just, we say this piece of paper has value.
Right. Yeah.
And so go collect that piece of paper.
Right. Yeah.
So it almost feels to me like Jesus is trying to emphasize the silliness of money.
Yeah.
Of like, this is meaningless.
Yeah. God does
they
not
want
care
these
about
shiny little bits of metal. Give them their shiny metal.
Right.
Whatever.
Exactly.
Like,
I think that's exactly it. He's like, God has not required this of you. God is not, demanding this from you.
Yeah. Because sometimes when I read like the messages that Jesus is sending and the way that he's teaching, I like to read it as if he's a sarcastic teenager.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it's like,
Jesus is so sarcastic.
Yeah, whatever, dude. Like, go grab a fish and pull the coin out of the fish's mouth. It's But I do wonder, like, is pulling the coin out of the fish's mouth considered one of Jesus's miracles?
I don't know. Because I guess we don't actually see him do it. He just like kind of tells him to do it, so we don't. But I mean, maybe it is considered. Yeah. I'm not sure actually, off the top of my head.
I think your interpretation of the meaning behind that makes a lot of sense to me, because I was also reading like some theologians interpret it as like the provision of God, of like God will provide to you no matter what. And so like, go pull a fish out of the sea and that fish will have a coin in it, and like you'll be surprised by the ways that God provides.
Sure.
Which like I get.
Sure.
But I really like the thought of like, this money is meaningless. Sure. If they want money, give them the money.
Yeah. And
that's
it's just
fine.
Emphasizing, like you are.
This has nothing to do with your
the way
this is, God loves you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like God, as a child of God, you are free.
Yeah.
You are not, this is again, like showing the distance of the temple leaders from who God is.
Yeah.
So how far they've gotten. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to another animal.
All right.
Pigs.
Yeah. I love these transitions. They're so smooth.
I know. I'm really going for it today. Okay, what is this story of Jesus moving demons, like casting demons out of people and putting them into like a herd of pigs?
Mm-hmm. So at the end of Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 28, when he came to the other side, to the country of the Gadarenes, 2 demoniacs coming out of the tombs met him. They were so fierce that no one could pass that way. Suddenly they shouted, "What have you to do with us, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Now a large herd of swine was feeding at some distance from them. The demons begged him, "If you cast us out, send us into the herd of swine." And he said to them, "Go." So they came out and entered the swine, and suddenly the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and perished in the water. The swineherds ran off, and on going into the town, they told the whole story about what had happened to the demoniacs. Then the whole town came out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they begged him to leave their neighborhood. So Jesus sends demons, evil spirits, whatever you want to call them, out of people into pigs. That doesn't seem very animal friendly. As somebody who like loves animals, it's like, oh, I don't love that. I know, little like they don't know. But one thing I kind of saw that was like that demons, or that Jesus essentially is sending the demons back where they belong, which is like into the abyss. Mm-hmm. They don't belong in people.
Well, also, wasn't it a Jewish belief? Maybe I think it still is a Jewish belief that swine is unclean.
Yes,
it's an unclean animal.
Exactly. Yes. So while we may love pigs and think they're cute, that yes, in Jewish tradition, pigs were unclean. This is also the land where they were is also thought to be Gentile land. Then you involve demons, and then you have Gentile land, demons, pigs, and tombs, all things that are really unclean, or like unclean, not favorable. So you have all of those elements, and Jesus is able to perform a miracle with all of these unclean elements involved. So it just like even draws more attention to Jesus's power, because right before this, Jesus has healed people who have asked for healing, and then Jesus stills the storm. That's actually when it says when he came to the other side, that's like them from getting on the boat where he has stilled the storm. So now he has power over sickness and power over nature, and now he has power over the supernatural too. So it's kind of like building up and showing this wow, there is no limit to Jesus's power, that it's not even just in Jewish lands. It's not even when people would ask for it specifically, because something I didn't notice is that the people who are possessed by the demons don't ask for exorcism. Jesus just does it. So it's like there is.
Well, I thought that they said like if you cast us out, cast us into pigs.
The demons ask.
Oh,
it, yeah. So I don't know if you want to, like semantics, but like so it just like shows the like there is no limit mm-hmm. or prediction to what Jesus will do.
I do totally want to get into the demon thing. So,
okay, yeah, let's go for it.
Demonic possession.
Yeah.
I have weird feelings about it. No. I know that there's a lot of
really?
people who... Does that surprise you?
Does anybody have not weird feelings about it?
Well, I mean, there are people who believe really strongly in demons exist.
No, I get what you're saying now.
Yeah. So I hear this story of like people are possessed by demons. Mm-hmm. Jesus casts the demons out of the people into the pigs. But like a big question for me is, what is the deal with all this demonic possession and like the transfer of spirit and all of this stuff? Because like I think that a lot of people will say demonic possession still happens today.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we have medically explained a lot of things like that. Like I've always wondered about, okay, things that people saw as demonic possession, could it have actually been schizophrenia?
Sure.
Could it have actually have been bipolar disorder?
Right.
Could it, like, there's so many different, or it could have even been like a brain bacteria.
Right.
Like you don't know.
Right.
And we have so many medical things now that we can see, oh, this behavior 200 years ago would have been classified as demonic possession.
Sure. Yeah.
But now we can see there's a diagnosis with it, and some of it is treatable.
Right.
So I wonder about like this whole idea of demons, and that Jesus is casting out demons, but like if there are/were demons, couldn't he have had the power to just like get rid of them entirely? Or is it that demons are going to exist? It's just, where are they going to exist? Like, so that's a lot.
That is a lot.
That I did not prepare you for.
I don't have a angelology theology.
I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on the demons? And it can be from a personal perspective, or if you know the Methodist theology. But like this understanding of Jesus casting out demons and moving them from one being to another being.
Right. So, I personally do also have a hard time with this, because I know and have seen people with different mental disorders that definitely would have been classified as demon possession. So it's hard for me to say what whether it's demons or a disorder, if they're different. I don't know. I'm not versed in that, and the Bible does not actually give us a lot about like what to think about it. So I can only speak from looking at this story written in the first century, that's like all they could come up with of like that. This is that. I mean, we can't explain why this person is acting so strangely, so uncontrollably. We have to attribute it to, it must be demon possession. It must be an evil spirit. So that's the only way I can speak to it. And that Jesus, I mean, all of Jesus's conversations with the evil spirits, with demons throughout Scripture, those make me uncomfortable, because I'm like, how is he conversing with these spirits? And like, what I think it's whether it historically happened or not, of like there were truly, literally demons that Jesus spoke these words to or not. This story is trying to communicate that Jesus has the power over everything. That even evil spirits, supernatural things that we cannot control, recognize who Jesus is, and Jesus has power over them. That was the end. Like, if there's an evil spirit, like, sorry, you're ostracized, you're out of here. Like, there is no help or hope for you. But Jesus is showing that there is indeed help and hope, and through him, through love. So I feel like that's whether that happened or not about literally evil spirits. It's a vehicle for showing Jesus's love and mercy and grace. So
yeah, I mean, this could go so many different ways. I mean, it is a strange story. I understand the thought that this shows Jesus's power over evil, but then my mind starts wandering around. Okay, why is there this problem of evil?
Right.
Like, why is it? Because like, if Jesus has power over evil, then I feel like he should have power to eradicate evil and not just relocate evil,
Sure.
And so my mind starts buzzing about it. And this is one of the things that I personally really struggle with. And I don't have the spiritual gift of faith. I am filled with doubts constantly, and I question everything at all times. And so for these people in scriptural times that when you say this person has a demon, like there's really no questioning of it. Like there's not a question of, do demons really exist? Like it's not, I can't see in scripture where it talks about like, this is where demons came from.
Right.
It's just, they're there. They're part of things. We get it. Like we're not going to question it. That person has a demon, you know? And so those are the kind of stories that I like to just skip over.
Yeah. No, because I'm like, okay, that doesn't relate to me. I don't deal with demons regularly.
Yeah. And so like this story of Jesus with the demon pigs is often one that I'm just like, okay, I'll just like move past this where he starts teaching about love again, because this is a little too much for me to digest. I don't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't have any questions to follow that up, but I'll just say this is one of the stories of Jesus that just kind of sits uneasy with me. Yeah. And like, ow. I just spilled my entire cup of coffee. It's the demons.
They're
cleaning up coffee. Alyssa's cleaning coffee.
So what I was going to say was it all of the stories where, like you mentioned, Jesus is communing with evil spirits make me a little uneasy, just because I don't get it. I don't. So I just want to just move on to the next topic. To be honest.
Fair.
Okay. Spitting on blind people.
Spitting on blind people. That seems.
And I don't mean that as in like.
Oh, right. No.
In a derogatory way. Not spitting on blind people.
Right.
But using spit.
Yeah.
I should clarify that. Using spit to heal blind people.
Yes.
Why do you think that Jesus used spit as a method of healing? Was there like symbolic or cultural significance to like saliva or anything like that?
I really looked hard for this and I couldn't find anything about specifically spit or saliva. Like when I looked it up, it was spit only has negative connotations of like people spitting on people who they thought were unclean or anything like that. So I thought that was really interesting. I was like, wait, I've never stopped to think about like that. Would this be an unclean thing that Jesus is doing? Or is it just like one more, is it a practical thing of like, there's no water, so I need to make mud or get somehow like there needs to be something wet. I don't know. So I don't know if it was a practical thing or if it was like even more like intimate thing. I don't know.
And I think I like you bringing up like spit being unclean, because it's another example, like we mentioned with the pig thing, of like maybe possibly an unclean setting or unclean means God is still present in that.
Yeah.
But I also like you bringing up intimacy of like, there is something extremely intimate about like using your own body to heal others, which hello, like
that's pretty cool.
What Jesus did.
Kind of his big thing.
Yeah. And I also wonder, about like just the continuation of Jesus using unconventional ways to interact and be in community with others.
Draw attention.
But initially, this might make you laugh, when I was thinking about the spit stuff, and I didn't do a lot of research around it, but I was like, oh, well, maybe there's something positive about spit, because in my big fat Greek wedding, you like spit on a person to like wish them good luck and good tidings.
Yeah,
and all
I don't
of
know.
that. So like, I just remember this scene with her like walking down the aisle at her wedding and everybody spitting on her to like...
Well,
that's a good omen.
I mean, that's a valid thought.
So I was like, oh, well.
Maybe there's something about it in their culture. Not that I could find, but I think it's also has something to do with like this kind of two-step healing sort of, that it's like supposed to draw attention to like, not that the first time it didn't take, but it's again a very symbolic thing, because this is actually like in any New Testament class that you would take, every professor would reckon, like, Mark is split into two, is like could be divided in half, and this is the story where is like the hinge of from like Jesus's teaching and miracles, and then to his journey to Jerusalem. So it's this story is highlighting like the spiritual blindness. It's like, okay, they can see in part, the disciples are kind of getting it. And then with one more step that when they've committed and they say like they can start all of a sudden now they can see, because immediately after this, literally like the next verses in Mark, Peter is when Peter declares Jesus to be the Messiah, because they say, who do people say I am? And they're like, oh, some think that you're John, some think that you're Elijah. And and Jesus says, who do you say I am? And he says, you are the Messiah. So it's like a very like back to back, very clearly like this is Jesus trying to demonstrate of like spiritual blindness to spiritual clarity.
Yeah. And then also it can't be attributed to anything else but Jesus.
Yeah.
You know? Because like if he's using his own spit to do this, then you can't say, oh, there was a healing agent in the water, or there was something like
that's true.
It's all within him.
Yeah,
so he's the one who brings this both spiritual and physical transformation about.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that one's not so weird, but I'm still
but
weirded
it is
out
strange
by spit.
because none of the other ones he uses, like he heals a lot of people and never
and
it's never
like,
again used. Yeah, he never licks his hand. Is like, let me get that for you. Yeah. So I think it's to draw attention to the difference of this miracle, and it's like in the John passage, it's a slightly like. Involving the person in their miracle, because he tells them to go wash their face, and then they're healed. So it's like that response coming from the person of you get to participate in this. You really want this healing. If you are willing to participate in it, like you have access to it, kind of, that Jesus will give you the first, like, kind of open the door, and not that it's like a works based faith, but of like just a response to it. So anyway.
Okay. So the very last one I want to cover, if we have time, is where in Mark chapter 4, starting in verse 10, when Jesus explains why he teaches in parables. So I'm going to read this one real quick, and then I'm going to ask a few questions because I don't like it. It upsets me. Okay. So it says, when they were alone, the people around Jesus, along with the 12, asked him about the parables. He said to them, the secret of God's kingdom has been given to you, but to those who are outside, everything comes in parables. This is so they can look and see, but have no insight, and they can hear, but not understand. Otherwise, they might turn their lives around and be forgiven. Okay. Like, isn't that the point? Don't we want people to turn their lives around and be forgiven?
Yes.
But what it sounds like to me is Jesus is saying, oh, if I was too straightforward and I made it too easy, then everyone would get it. And we don't want everyone to get it. And so how am I, and I've read it in a ton of different versions, like trying to figure out, okay, certainly I am misreading this. I tried to do some research on it, and like the research that I saw was saying, this is really confusing. So like, why? Because I always wonder of Jesus teaching in parables and stories, like the answer I usually get is, oh, so it sticks with people so that you can apply it to like the way you live your life, all of these things. But it's like, why couldn't he have just told us, here are the things that you need to do to improve your relationship with God. Here is what God is looking for. Here's what it means to love other people more directly. And this verse seems to be telling me because he doesn't want everyone to understand it.
No, I can totally see why and how we can read it that way. One thing I'll say is that stories communicate more than a lecture. Stories communicate more than like a series of statements. I can't explain how or why, but like we all just know that. Like there's a reason like movies or books like take on meanings for different people, depending on what, like what character you see in yourself, or like somehow stories just communicate more. And that's what a parable is. And also that, I guess the thing is that Jesus is kind of saying is like, I'm not because it does make it seem like he's purposely trying to be vague. But I think, he's kind of drawing attention to like, not everybody will get this. You have to be in the right mindset to understand what I'm trying to say. And your heart, you have to be willing to learn. And a lot of, I think the thing that Jesus was kind of saying is that kind of drawing attention to these leaders. A lot of these leaders are not humble people. They think they know all these things, and people who think they know are not humble and they're not willing to learn. And Jesus is like, you have to be willing to learn from me. You can't be a prideful person and be in relationship with God, because the only way to be in relationship with God is to know who God is and who you are, and you are humble compared to God. So
it's almost like Jesus is saying, I don't want to give you another list of legalisms to memorize, to hold over people.
Yeah.
I want this to be something that you have to contemplate in your heart and sit with and wrestle with and examine yourself and have some self-awareness.
Right.
Which I understand that, but what I struggle with is, man, it just leaves so much room for misinterpretation and false teachings.
Yes.
Because, and it
I know.
I don't know if there would have, I can't say, oh, I have a better way than Jesus did it, you know? But it I don't know. I struggle.
No, it makes sense why you struggle. Like it does lead a lot of misinterpretation.
Because a lot of our faith is we want everyone to come in on it, and we want everyone to get to experience Jesus's love and be a part of it. But it's kind of like the same mentality within the addiction community of like, you have to want to get better to get better.
Yeah.
You have to want to be in relationship. You have to want to learn and understand.
And Jesus is like, the door is open for you. Like you are like, so that's what like the parable to me is kind of like Jesus, like I'm opening the door for you to understand you, but you do have to take the step into it. Like, I'm not going to force you. So the beautiful and terrible thing about free choice is that God allows us, if you know, some of us ascribe to that God loves us enough that God is willing to risk us making mistakes and like getting hurt to allow us to choose God and to choose love.
I think that's a note to end on, and to have that mentality as we're wrestling with like all of the weird stories of Jesus, all of the weird stories in the Bible as a whole, or stories we come across from other people's faith experience. It's all stuff that we are to contemplate and reflect on and participate in, and not something that we are just supposed to memorize and take at face value and keep as a list of ways to be a Christian.
Right.
So I thank you, Gracie.
Thanks for having me
taking
again.
the time, and I can't wait to have you back.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
The Life Plus God podcast is hosted, written, and produced by me, Alyssa Robinson, and sponsored by Treach Memorial United Methodist Church in Flower Mound, Texas. If you live in the Flower Mound area, I invite you to stop by and see if Treach could be your new church family. You can learn more about all of our programs and events at tmumc.org, and I hope to catch you next week for our next episode of the Life Plus God podcast.